Today, I want to talk about the growing role of social media and the spiritual temptations it can lead to. In his writing, Swedenborg focuses on a few primary areas that humans face that create great temptation. These include our desire to control other people, it's our desire to be famous and have status, and our desire to make a lot of money and indulge in our every wish. So throughout times, we've seen these temptations play out. They've played out in our own lives. We all have them, and we've seen them, and it's a challenge. In the movie industry, we see people who have always craved to be celebrity. In politics here in DC, we've always seen people who want to control other people and have status. And in the financial world that we live in, there's always been people who've been frankly greedy, beyond imagination. No amount of money is too much. But with the introduction of social media, we now have a gateway drug for our rising generation on all of these temptations. Young TikTok users are producing videos a couple times a day, and they're watched by millions, and they can make millions even at 24 years old. These short little clips can be both mindless, and they can be educational, and they can be actually quite mesmerizing. In an insightful article that came out in the New Yorker this week by Chris Hayes, the author points out that we're raising a generation who sees celebrity as their goal. The piece is entitled, "On the Internet, We're Always Famous. What happens when the experience of celebrity becomes universal?" I'm going to read a quote from the article. "This has been entirely internalized by the generation who came to age with social media. A clever TikTok video can end up with 40 million views. With the possibility of this level of exposure so proximate, it's not surprising that poll after poll over the past decade indicates that fame is increasingly the prime objective of people 25 and younger. Fame itself, in the older, more enduring sense of the term, is still elusive, but the possibility of a brush with it functions as a kind of pyramid scheme." We also know on this topic that we're experiencing a record amount of depression among young people. My friend Jonathan Haidt tracks the rise of depression to 2011, the year that most teens own cell phones. Now, I'm about to turn 60 this year, and I find my cell phone addicting. I spend too much time on online apps. Being a prankster, I often tell friends who arrive at my cabin in West Virginia and ask for the Wi-Fi password that Wi-Fi and the internet doesn't really work out here in West Virginia. The sheer look of panic on their face can only be maintained as a joke for a minute, and I finally share the password, and you can see the blood starting to rush back into their face. So if I'm struggling in this whole new cell phone internet era at my age, how much harder is it for the rising generation? What efforts are out there to help young people find their way through these addictive temptations? These addictive temptations that have been created by corporations who know exactly how we operate and are playing to our body chemistry to get us addicted. So that's why I wanted to interview Brandon Robertson today. I became aware of Brandon when in a very prominent article, he had a book deal probably 2018 or so or earlier for a book called Nomad. He was already a young scholar on the religious patterns of young people. And then I noticed that the book was canceled because he had come out. And so the book is called Nomad. I just ordered it yesterday. But what I was impressed with was his courage. And then as I followed him, I invited him to our first ever spiritual entrepreneur conference at the church in 2016. And then he made national news by going to the Southern Baptist Convention with a pro-gay table. He was escorted out by police. And since that time, he has written 8 books on spirituality. And Brandon's also waded directly into the spiritual warfare debate online. And he's become a spokesman for progressive Christianity. And he's faced really brutal attacks being on TikTok, being on Instagram. Not just about his beliefs, but they'll attack his looks. They'll attack everything about a person. It's very cruel. It just seems like nothing's off the table. So I'm going to invite Brandon up for the interview time. So if you'll come up. Let's see. There you go. Welcome, Brandon, Church of the Holy City.
Thank you so much. Hey, everyone. Good to see all of you.
So let me know at home if you have any trouble hearing this. So my first question is, so if you can just give us the current state among your generation and the younger generation, that you're facing these in really incredible temptations with really no spiritual guidance. So what's the state of things as far as you're concerned?
Yeah, it was interesting as you were reading the article earlier that I actually think it's a tension. It's not quite as black and white about this desire for fame with my generation and younger generations. I think on one hand, yes, it is the classic, people just want clout. People are just trying to have meaning, and the way we understand meaning is by being known by lots of people. But I also think the internet age, social media has created an interconnected world. And so it's not just fame. When you're these young people, I mean, like on Instagram, for instance, I have 10,000 followers. To some people, that sounds like a lot, but there are 12-year-olds with 20,000 followers, and it's not fame because they're actually making real connections with a lot of these people, as crazy as that sounds. And so I think there's this weird tension in the social media era of, yes, this desire of the ego to want to be known by lots of people, and this new reality that you can actually be connected to thousands of people in a meaningful way. And I think there's real possibility and potential for spiritual depth. There's real possibility and potential for growth and education, because people are connected to perspectives and people and places in the world that other generations could only have dreamed about being connected with. So I don't know exactly what the state of social media is spiritually in the world, but I think generationally, there's going to be this back and forth push and pull between the egoic desire to exploit these platforms for whatever kind of clout we might want, and these new opportunities to meet, to connect, and to be known and know thousands of people with different beliefs and perspectives around the world. And that might help us with polarization one day.
That's a really great perspective. Listening to you, I think that every generation comes up with its technology, and it's like, this is the end of the world, TV, radio, whatever the technology is. And so, and we adapt and we evolve. Yeah. So I started looking at some of your TikToks yesterday, and there's literally hundreds of things. And when I'm listening to you, I'm realizing you've probably reached thousands and thousands of particularly kids with a message about Christianity, with the message about inclusion. Do you have any examples or any people who would have never been reached if not for social media?
Yeah, as cliche as it sounds, I mean, every day I'm either getting messages, comments, emails. Today, one reason I was a little late getting over here is I was doing a TikTok live, and I was talking to about 500 people. A majority of them are under the age of 18. And a lot of them are like me. When I was a 12-year-old, I was a fundamentalist Christian, and I was going around to my peers in school telling them that they were going to hell because they were gay or Muslim or whatever else. And so you get a lot of these kids showing up on my feed saying what I was saying when I was 12. And the thing is, they stick around. It's not like they show up to my feed, leave a mean comment and go. They're listening. They're clearly wanting to engage and know more. And I always get comments that really, it's what encouraged me to keep doing it, where they say, listen, I was about to either walk away from faith altogether, or I didn't see a way out of this conservative bubble, and I'm just so glad that somebody like you exists. There's a hashtag, if anybody's interested, progressive clergy on TikTok, and there's about, I think, 150 of us of Jewish and Christian traditions primarily. And we're constantly interacting with these young people who, again, in the walls of their the four walls of their church would never have a chance to know that there's a different way of being Christian. But because social media puts my video on their For You page, which is just an algorithm-driven page, they get exposed to a different perspective. And my hope is that they begin the journey towards at least rethinking their faith as a 12-year-old, which I wasn't able to do until I was 21 because I didn't have all the resources that they have. So, yeah.
Yeah, when I looked at your site, I actually did go down the rabbit hole of checking out some of the critics, and they were, a lot of them were like 16 or 17. And I also saw myself in that. I mean, they have all the answers. They
Yeah.
know the Bible, they know everything. They're crystal clear. They're really proud of themselves for what they know. And but they are engaging you. And I was, they know your name. They're talking that you're a brand out there. They're all talking about you. So I thought that was really cool. So I think what you've demonstrated in your first answer is that look at this as an opportunity, social media, not just for the dark side. In the sort of way I presented in my sermon is a little bit negative. So what do you think about the addictive side of it, the negative side of it, and so forth, that people literally can't put their phone down? What do you have any advice about that on that side of it, and the spiritual aspects of that?
So this is like asking an addict for advice about the addiction, because
well, we're all addicted.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I constantly, daily, this is addictive behavior. I feel guilty as I think that I come to the end of my day and I realize that I've been staring at a screen for maybe 12 hours, and that's, on one hand, insane to think about, because I have a deep conviction that we're made for more than being on screens. And what I said earlier is true as well, that though I'm looking at a screen for 12 hours a day or 8 hours a day or whatever it might be, I'm interacting with people. It's not like we're being antisocial. Yes, there's addictive things. Yes, there are unhealthy rabbit holes you can go down on the internet, but there's real opportunity to be connected, to learn, to be producing things. And if you actually look at what most of us are doing, sitting on our computers all day, we're doing really incredible stuff. You're writing sermons and coaching people at, like, there are really tremendous opportunities. So I do think going forward, the next generation actually holds the answers to this. They're not as addicted as we are, I think. If you look at most 18 or younger social media, their Instagram might have 3 pictures on it. They might, most of them don't have Facebook. Their TikToks, they're not producing content, they're just viewing it. Like, I see younger generations actually having more of a balance with technology than we do, my generation in particular. And I think there's going to be a great pulling away in the future. I hope there's a great pulling away where at least we all learn some sort of rhythm to break out of these addictive patterns these companies are trying to create. And we normalize retreating 1 day a week. A friend that we both have, that you connected me to, Angie Thurston, I've heard her talk about doing every Saturday a tech-free day where they put their phones in a box and they don't use social media or anything at all. I think that's going to have to be a healthy rhythm that we all adopt eventually. But I also want to push back against any demonization of technology, because I think we're actually living, the digital world is the real world. And COVID has really proven that. I mean, look at us now in church, digitally. So I could rant on that for hours. But.
Well, you're really presenting a really positive view of the potential for social media. I think, understanding all the reality of the dangers of it. But what I also hear you saying is that in the first generation of anything, it's sort of like if you've never, we never had access to food like we do in this generation. So of course we're obese. Yeah. And now what are we doing? We're all on diets. We're all learning to eat healthier, because we've never had such abundance and such easy access to bad food. Yeah. And so we've all had to figure that out. So I'm wondering if food might be a really interesting analogy of like, we're going to have to come to terms with this. And you're very hopeful that the next generation is going to figure that out. What do you, the last question I just want to ask, and we'll have time for questions afterward. What do you see as the ways that churches can be more involved in this? Because you've kind of, I know you're hired by a lot of churches to help them navigate these waters. What advice do you have for churches to be more engaging, particularly with younger people who are just, as we know, they are not coming to church and they're not coming back? So what are your thoughts on that?
I think the first thing we need to all realize is that virtual reality is reality. We're going to continue to go into a more virtual, more digitized, more internet-driven world, and there is no turning back. And so instead of resisting and demonizing it, we have to just say this is reality going forward. Humans will evolve in some way, I think in some very physical way, over the coming 1,000 years to adapt to this. So we need to be in that mindset that this is what's happening going forward for humanity. I also think people need to stop being afraid of technology. I think there's this idea, what I learned on TikTok is you don't need to curate beautiful content with good lighting and whatever. People are often really afraid to put anything out there because they're afraid it doesn't sound good or look good or have whatever. My TikTok is me waking up in the morning, rolling out of bed, putting on a baseball cap and sitting down and answering people's questions that they send to me. And I don't script it out. I don't spend time thinking about it. I'm just responding from my heart and my education. And thousands of people are watching and engaging that content, and it's helping people. I think whatever kind of social media you're engaged in, whether it's a church or whether you're an individual, the purpose of social media is to connect us to real people. And I think the younger generations have gotten this in a way that older generations haven't. There's no facade on social media. There's that whole idea in my generation that like Instagram filters is the way we do our life. We put off this fake image on Instagram. I think the younger generations are just putting their full self on the internet and people are seeing them for who they are. So if you're a church leader, be yourself. Make videos, make content, put yourself out there, host services, do Zoom chats, and don't be worried about making it perfect and professional. I think what compels people about religion is when they see religious leaders being authentic. And I think this digital means of communication is making it easier for us to show up and be authentic. And every church I talk to, it's if you're not engaging on these platforms, if you're not willing to engage on TikTok, your church isn't going to exist in 20 years. Because again, this isn't going away as much as we would like to be in this room together. This kind of gathering is going to be the future of not only the church, but the world. And we just have to get away of the fear and start making good content, you know?
That's beautiful. That's a really positive view of things, and but based in, absolute reality. It is very symbolic. We're in an empty church, speaking to people digitally. And, in our spiritual tradition, we have these views of heaven and hell. And one of the views of heaven is you can instantly be with someone regardless of time and space. And it's always occurred to me that technology is accomplishing some of that spiritual energy, that you can literally be with someone regardless of time and space using technology. And if you look at it from a positive perspective. So we're focused on the next evolution of Christianity. And I think what you're describing is something we need to pay attention at Church of the Holy City. In our last strategy meeting, we did kick around this phrase, Holy City Media, of just being a place that produces content more. I think we do have to get out of our comfort zones. And it took the pandemic to jolt us onto online services, which has worked really well.
All of you need to pressure him to get on TikTok immediately, okay? So I need to see.
So I need to be on TikTok because I've got nothing else to do. But no, I hear you. And I'm particularly thinking about if you care about young people, you have to be where they are. It doesn't matter where you are. So this has been very helpful. We're going to open it up to questions in just a few minutes with everybody after the service. But thank you for doing our spiritual entrepreneur interview.
I'll see you all soon.
Okay. Thank you. All right. At this time, we pass our virtual plate to everybody. And if you could, I will say that the board sent out a really wonderful fundraising campaign at the end of the year, asking for a goal of $2,400 a month in monthly pledges. And I'm super, super happy that that's actually